Hello, this is Mike Douglas, and you're listening to the Snow Brains podcast.
Hello, and welcome to the Snow Brains podcast, where it's my job to interview the most intelligent people in the snow sports industry and pass their fascinating knowledge on to you, our listeners. I'm your host, Miles Clark. I'm a professional free skier, professional mountain guide, and Alaska heli ski guide, a UC Berkeley molecular cell biology graduate, the founder and CEO of Snow Brains. And as we speak, I'm currently rocking and rolling through rough seas and ripping winds in the notorious Drake Passage between Antarctica and South America, after ski guiding my second trip to Antarctica in the past month and my 7th ski guiding trip here overall. This ended up being one of the biggest trips of my life, going from Utah to Ushuaia, Argentina, to Antarctica, to Ushuaia, to Torres del Paine, Chile, to El Chalten, Argentina, to Ushuaia, to Antarctica, to Ushuaia, and I'll finally be heading back to Utah again tomorrow. 1,700 miles by car, 3,000 miles by boat, and 14,000 miles by air. I've been on the road for 5 weeks, and it's been absolutely surreal. We saw leopard seals, humpback whales, blue whales, fin whales, gentoo penguins, chinstrap penguins, wandering albatrosses, Andean condors, flamingos, rheas, black-necked swans, llamas, guanacos, foxes, armadillos, and more. I skied Ushuaia 6 days, Antarctica 10 days, and El Chalten 1 day. It's been one of the wildest trips of my life, and I'll be forever grateful. Today's episode of the Snow Brains podcast is brought to you by Elevenate. Not ready to compromise on quality, fit, or function? Elevenate ski gear is designed by athletes for athletes to feel like a second skin. Infinitely comfortable to ski in, dependable and protective when nature shows its harshest side. Technical ski gear that allows you to discover the mountain without compromising. Designed and developed in Åre, Sweden. Discover this year's collection at elevenate.com. Today's episode of the Snow Brains podcast is brought to you by Brian Head Resort. Lift tickets are as low as $29 at Brian Head Resort, located in southeastern Utah. You'll also enjoy a free $10 resort credit on select dates. Use your corduroy cash on resort restaurants, snow tubing, ski lessons, and much more. While supplies last, get $29 lift tickets with a bonus $10 corduroy cash, only at brianhead.com. My guest today is the legendary pro skier Mike Douglas, the Godfather of Freeskiing. Hello, Mike. Welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being here. How are you, man?
I'm doing pretty good.
Right on. Well, I kind of always ask this. I know it's the middle of summer, but when did you ski last?
I skied last in late May, closing weekend at Whistler Blackcomb. Yeah, it was a nice spring day. We had a crazy spring up here. It was like winter decided to come back in April and May, and probably my best downhill powder day of the year was May 19th. You can believe that.
Really? I love it, man. I love the late springs. I think it was the same on the West Coast too, because even in Mammoth, where I was, way south of you, it was almost just kind of a pain in the ass. It was just kept snowing, but not enough to really be a powder day. And it was just cold. And, at that point, you just want corn. How many days did you ski this year?
I probably got, I think, just under 100.
Oh, wow. So you're getting a lot of days.
Yeah. I mean, I love skiing, man. I'm out there every chance I get. I mean, a ski day for me often isn't a full ski day. Like it could be, a 2 or 3 hour ski tour, or go up for a few hours just to get some laps in the morning before I got to do some other work type stuff. But no, I get out there as much as I can.
Nice, man. Yeah, I know I'm the same. I don't like to say that out loud, but yeah, a lot of days are pretty short. So today, Mike, I really want to dig into your free skiing, your filmmaking, your pioneer ski making, and more. So we're going to start with this rapid fire section, and then we'll dig into some of your bigger stories.
Okay, sounds good.
Here we go. How many days do you ski per year?
These days, probably averages around 100. Back in my 20s, I was probably doing closer to 200, 150 to 200 a year.
Wow. And how many of those days do you think are backcountry days?
Probably about half in the backcountry.
Oh, wow.
I like
a lot.
Yeah, quite a bit. Here at Whistler, where I ski most of the time, it's pretty busy. So a ski day is often, go up and do a lap or two on the chair and then be like, it's kind of crowded. Let's take off and go for a tour. And so backcountry is a pretty regular thing for me, for sure.
What's your biggest accomplishment in skiing?
Probably just that I'm still here. The one thing that surprised me more than anything is just that I'm still technically a professional skier. I still get paid to go skiing, and it's freaking awesome. I'd never thought you could do it past 35, let alone to 52, where I'm at now.
That's incredible, man. I love it. And it's inspiration for me because I'm 44 and trying to keep it rolling as long as possible. What's your biggest accomplishment in life?
Family, my kid, I've almost got 2 grown kids. My son's about to turn 19. My daughter's 15. And I'm still married to the same woman. We've been together for 26 years.
Wow. Congratulations. How do you define yourself?
I'm a skier. I'm a dad. I'm a filmmaker, an outdoor enthusiast. I don't know. I guess I haven't put much thought into that.
That's why I like to ask that question. It takes most people off guard. What's your favorite place, or where's your favorite place to ski?
Oh, I mean, you got to say home. I mean, there's a reason that you live where you live, I think. I mean, Whistler is one of those pretty magical places that just has so much of everything. But if we take that off the table, well, right now in my mind is Portillo in Chile. And I love that place. And it's front of mind because I'm actually heading down there in a couple of weeks. So for the first time in 3 years.
Right.
And it's a very special place in my heart. It's somewhere I've been to a lot of times and I just love it. The Andes are amazing, and just the whole vibe of Portillo is something totally unique in the ski world.
I love that. I'm me as well. I did 11 seasons in a row in Bariloche. And cool. of course, I got kicked out the last 2 years, as we all did. And I'm so excited. I'm going back on Wednesday. So
nice.
I'm really fired up, man. And so if you had to pick a few mountain ranges, what might be your favorite mountain ranges?
Well, obviously, so I just said the Andes are just, the scale is just another level, as you know.
Yeah.
I mean, the Alps, I love skiing in Europe. Europe is just there's so much variety of culture and mountains and rock formations and all these things in such a small space in Europe. And I really love going over there and just chasing powder. Obviously, coast mountains of BC are pretty amazing. Alaska, Chugach, and then Japan, of course. Japanese Alps are something else.
I agree with that. A lot of people like to go to Hokkaido, but yeah, I did 4 seasons in Hakuba in the Japanese Alps, and I just love that zone. It's so special there. What would you do if you couldn't ski?
I would probably try to surf more. I really like surfing. It's kind of like my second favorite sport. I mountain bike a lot in the summer. That's kind of my summer thing, but it's only because the surfing is too hard to access. But I really love surfing.
That's great. I share that with you. A lot of us actually, a lot of people that come on the show share that. I just got back from a little surf trip, and surfing is my favorite sport. I'm just not very good at it. I don't do it very often, but it's so pure. I really like that. What scares you the most in the mountains?
Dying.
Yeah, I agree. And is there any particular situation?
I think avalanches as backcountry skiers, avalanches are always the thing it never leaves your mind, and it shouldn't. I think that's part of the reason you can stay safe out there is that you're always analyzing and you're always looking at slopes and assessing snowpack and those sorts of things. But it's one of those things where you can know everything there is to know, and there can still be a surprise. And often when we hear of these accidents and people going down, they're not usually really inexperienced people. Often they're the people with the most experience. So there's always that little fear. And when I hear about an accident, it really frustrates me to see people get upset and say, oh, what an idiot, and didn't know what he's doing and all this stuff. And when I read an accident report, I often think of, oh man, I think I would have made all those same decisions and that could have been me. And I do try to read accident reports a lot because I'm just trying to learn. I'm just trying to learn where mistakes were made and trying to pick up things from other people's experiences.
And I think that's something to take home for our listeners too. And I try to do the same thing because that is my biggest fear in the mountains. And I'm always clawing to learn as much as I possibly can. especially about the zones that I go to and the snowpacks that I spend my time in. What do you love most in the mountains?
The best thing is that there's just so many ways to experience them. There's so many ways to ski. There's so many different styles and genres in skiing. It's always new and always fresh and always different. It's so rare, especially around here, on the West Coast, the weather's wild, right? So you've got powder one day, it could be raining the next day, solid ice, and then, high winds, and it just keeps you on your toes. And there's that sense of adventure and uncertainty every time you head out there that just gets me going, and it never gets old for me.
I love that, man. What might be the funniest accident or a funny story that you've had in the mountains?
Well, I'm not a young guy, so I'll my memories kind of shot, but probably the most recent funny, stupid thing that happened to me that comes to mind is it was New Year's Eve this past winter. And I was up there on the top of Blackcomb with my buddy Kevin, and we were just watching the sunset. It was like -20, freezing cold, but bluebird and gorgeous, and the snow was incredible. And we said, it's the last day of 2021. Let's just soak this in. And so as we're up there, standing on our skis and looking out to the view, I got a little hungry, so I grabbed a Cliff Bar out of my backpack. And I open it up and go to bite, and I just felt clunk, and one of these teeth is a crown.
No.
And I broke my crown off on a frozen Cliff Bar.
Oh God, that's terrible. And I have a good friend who ripped out a crown on a shot block that Cliff Bar makes. The big gummies. Yeah. And it was great because I have a photo of it still, because he held it out to me with the crown on it. It was gross but hilarious.
Yeah. And to make matters worse, it was New Year's Eve, I believe, was a Friday night this year. And of course, that makes it a long weekend because it's New Year's. So I couldn't get into the dentist. So I've got this like little peg fang thing. Oof. And so I was going to have to wait till Monday to make it to the dentist. And then on Sunday, I tested positive for COVID.
Oh God.
So then I had to
Happy New Year, buddy.
Yeah, exactly. Welcome to 2022. So, I had to walk around for a couple of weeks with my little peg tooth because, you can't go to the dentist until you're all well clear of COVID. So.
Oh, what a pain. Yeah. Oh gosh. Yeah. Frustrating. Well, good story though. I like it. What might be the scariest accident you've had in the mountains?
Probably the more recent memory stuff. We were filming a project it was like a Toyota branded content thing back in early 2021. And we were in Revelstoke. I was with Chris Rubens, Jeff Schmuck, and Noah Morrison. Chris and Noah were the skiers. I was on the film crew. And it was, we were kind of finishing the day. We went out to, I think it was Kokanee Bowl, out of bounds at Revelstoke. Chris pointed out this line for Noah to ski. Noah dropped in, and when he landed a little bit forward off the cliff and started tomahawking. And in the pressure of his tomahawking, released the slope. And we had probably like a 1.5 to 2 size 2 avalanche. And Noah, we're filming, and I'm flying the drone at this point, and Noah disappeared. And it was terrifying. And it always seems to be this way, but he'd had a baby with his wife just, 3 months before. And it's just like the whole world is just flashing through your head. And it was, very hectic and stressful. But Chris Rubens was up on the ridge and did all the right things and was able to get down and dig him out very quickly. He was only about a foot under the snow, and he was able to kind of get a hand out.
That's
so
huge.
Chris actually spotted his hand while he was searching and got down to him. And it's crazy because I don't know if you've been involved in rescues, but it felt like it took forever for me before we got he's fine, everything's good. It took 90 seconds total.
Whoa, that's insane.
And I thought if you had asked me, I would have said 3 to 4 minutes.
Wow, that's impressive though, how quick they got him out. That's amazing.
Yeah, Chris Rubens was a rock star on that one. He was very calm. He just did all the right things, and and it worked out. So, but it was scary. That was a very scary 90 seconds.
That's crazy. It's really interesting. I was in a little avalanche on Kokanee Bowl this year. And
Oh, no way.
in January, I jumped off there's kind of a top rock that you can jump off. I don't know if it's the same that Noah did. And I skied that line all the way down, had a great run. So I was like, let's go back up there. There's kind of a wind spine, just like 10 feet left of that. So I skied kind of off the top with no air, just down this wind spine. And in one of my turns, I just popped that wind spine. It was, probably a size 1. And same thing, I had my helmet camera on, and it felt like I was in this little avalanche forever. And I was kind of on my butt and back with my skis pointed downhill, trying to get out of it. And I eventually did get out of it, but the snow was starting to bubble up on my mouth. I was very scared. It took forever. I pulled my bag. And when I went back and looked at the helmet cam footage, it was 15 seconds. I mean, it felt like I was in there for at least 2 minutes, but when I looked back, I counted out last, I was 15 seconds. It felt like a lifetime. And it felt like I was running out of air already, because I was like, should I be taking deep breaths? Should I hold my breath? I was kind of alternating between those. So much happened, in that 15 seconds. So I weird that, I've also had that similar experience in that similar place with a similar time warp. So cool. Thank you for sharing.
Crazy.
Thank you for sharing that. That is weird. And then this is something that's hard to talk about, but I think it's so important for us to talk about in this industry. We don't do it enough. How many friends might you have lost in the mountains?
Too many, that's for sure. I don't know, at least 10.
Yeah. Oh man.
And probably 5 really good friends, like very close friends. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you for mentioning that. Cause I do know that JP was one of your close friends, and I do want to talk about him a bit more later. But yeah, sorry that happened. But yeah, I think it's something that we all need to talk about more, because it's so real. And how do we move on, and how do we stay in this? And that's all part of the game. And how many avalanches might you have been in?
I'm knocking on wood right now under my table here. But I've been in a couple of very little ones. I've never been buried. I've managed to either ski out or get flushed out of everything that I've kicked off. So yeah, I feel extremely fortunate for sure.
That's great. Yeah, no, I'm glad to hear that. Have you ever been hurt while skiing?
Yeah, well, back to my short-term memory. I mean, I've had several injuries over the years, but at the same time, like, I have nothing to complain about. I'm probably the luckiest pro skier in the world. I'm not even kidding. I mean, the fact that I've had over 30 years of technically being a professional skier, I've never had, like, the worst thing I've done is a broken ankle and had some disc damage in my back, but nothing that ever stopped me for more than a few months. But, reality does come back to bite. So this past winter, I did one that was very frustrating, which was dislocated my shoulder.
Oh, yeah. And are you going to have surgery, or is it recovering?
I'm investigating options right now. Yeah, I did. I was just skiing down on a powder. It hadn't snowed for a few weeks in Whistler. And then we got about a foot of powder, and I was just ripping down and was making a hard turn and was dragging my left hand in the snow just a little bit. And there was an ice ball underneath the snow that I didn't see. And my hand hit it, and it just ripped my arm back super aggressively. And next thing I knew, my shoulder was out. And fortunately, I had a buddy with me, Ruben Krabbe, who was able to pop it back in. And honestly, we were in the middle of a film shoot, and we just kept going. I got through the season, but in June I did it again. Surfing. So now that it's happened twice, it's like one of those things where I'm going to have something done, I think. And I knew that as soon as I dislocated my shoulder. I have enough friends that have done it to know that it's usually once you've done it, it's likely to happen again. So.
And how was that pain on a scale of 1 to 10?
It's pretty high.
Yeah, that's my understanding. Yeah. Oh.
Yeah, it's cumulative. So on the first time I did it, it was only out for maybe a minute at the most. And so it was very painful, but we got it back in, and it's just instant relief when it goes back in. It was just like, because it wasn't out for that long, like once it was back in, I was like, oh, actually I feel pretty fine.
Yeah.
Second time I knocked it out, we couldn't get it back in on the site, and I had to go to the hospital, which was a drive and this and that. So it was 40 minutes before I got that one back in. And I can say that it kind of accumulates. It just gets worse over time the longer it's out. So
that's
not ideal.
That's rough. Yeah, I have a good buddy who's actually 6'8", and he popped his out in a bad crash in May in Yosemite. And we got it back in pretty much right away. And he's really big. I don't know if that has anything to do with it, but the sound it made when it went back in. Do you remember the sound? His was just clunk. It was, it was gross.
It's a clunk for sure. Yeah. But it's the best clunk ever. Like when you're the one that has your shoulder out, it's just like, like instant relief. It's so good.
Yeah. It was cool to see that his eyes changed. Just, oh my gosh. Thank you guys. That was pretty, because the first guy that we had other friends there, the first people on scene said, you know what, I think we should go to the hospital. And I was like, heck with that. Let's put it in now. And I'm in the end, I'm glad we did. So you've been on ski trips all over the world. Where was your favorite ski trip?
I mean, I've had some really good ones for sure. So many that it's probably not even fair to pick a favorite, but I'll just pop a few. Skiing in Gulmarg in Kashmir was something really, really, really cool, because I mean, I love using skiing as a way to explore cultures and explore the world. And so being in such a unique and different kind of place and actually having really good skiing. We had a 3-meter storm when we were there. It was some of the best powder skiing I've had. So that was something really special.
And Gulmarg's in India, in the Himalayas, just for our listeners.
Yeah. You're right on the edge of the Himalayas. Like from the top, you see Nanga Parbat, and you can almost see K2 and stuff like that. So it's right up there. It is very cool. We did a film in Greenland 5-6 years ago now, which was Greenland. We spent 15 days on the Greenland ice sheet, right on the edge of where the mountains start and the ice sheet. So we had ice sheet out one side. It's kind of like being in Denver. You have just flat on one side and these rad peaks on the other. And we were like camped right on the edge. And so that was something that was really, really cool. Greenland was definitely a place that I always wanted to go. And then one time, we got to go heli ski out of Mikhail Gorbachev's mountain hideaway in Russia, which was a complete trip.
How did that happen?
Yeah, it was kind of a wild story. So we had planned to go. This was right before the Sochi Olympics, and we had planned to go to Sochi to go ski the ski area before the Olympics and do a film about it. And as we were working on the plans, our Russian connection came in and said, they've shut everything down in Krasnaya Polyana, and there's no heli skiing. You can't even really ski at the resort. It's a big construction site. They're keeping people out. So I was like, oh, that's a bummer. So we kind of canceled the trip. But then the guy, our Russian connection, came back to us and said, hey, because he was quite upset that the Russian government had shut down his heli ski operation and his business. So as a sort of consolation for him, they said, well, we could give you this Gostacha, which is like a presidential mansion on the other side of the mountain range, on the north side, in this town called Arkiz. And you could operate your business there until the Olympics are over if you want.
Whoa.
And so anyway, so we got a call about this, and I was just like, you got to be kidding me. Like, there's no way we're going to stay in this Russian presidential mansion. It's absurd. But we went for it. And sure enough, I mean, I didn't fully believe it until we pulled up to these security gates at the front with barking dogs and guards with like AK-47s, and the gates part, and we go down this super long drive through these landscape grounds, and we show up
like James Bond.
Oh, totally James Bond. We show up at this pink marble mansion, and inside we made the film about it. It's called Glasnost, if anyone wants to check it out.
I definitely want to check it out
on Solomon Freeski TV on YouTube. And it was like literally, in each room was like a red phone and a white phone. So the red phone was to the Kremlin.
Whoa.
Direct line. So, I mean, it was trippy, man. I slept in Gorbachev's bed. The table that we would use like to go do some computer work on was where they signed the treaty that brought down the Berlin Wall and united Germany. And I mean, it was a trip. And then of course, and then of course we're going skiing. Like the heli comes and lands just down the road, and we go and fly into the Caucasus Mountains onto a side that basically no one skis on. So it's like all untouched terrain, and it was pretty wild.
That's the trip. And yeah, I mean, for our listeners, Mikhail Gorbachev, I think, was the last president of the USSR, of the Soviet Union.
So he's the one who kind of broke up the Soviet Union.
Yeah, because when Reagan and Mr. Gorbachev bring this wall down.
Exactly.
Wow, that's crazy.
So as someone who's 50 years old and grew up in that Cold War era, and that was like the nightly news, to go step into that world and be that close to it was a real trip.
And to step into it at that high level, that is crazy, man. Wow. And say the name of the film again, because I want to make sure
it's Glasnost.
Glasnost.
So,
okay.
Yeah, it's on the old Solomon Freeski TV YouTube channel.
Nice. Well, I know our listeners will dig that. I'm going to watch that too. That's great. And in all these travels you've been on, is there anywhere you would not go back to?
I mean, I don't think so. I mean, there's places you like more than others. A lot of it depends on the conditions you get, the people you meet, whatever. You can have a bad experience, someone robs you or whatever. But in general, I just love the adventure of it. Even when it gets super weird, I'm still usually digging it. So I just like moving around and experiencing other cultures and meeting people.
I agree. I'm in the same boat with you. Where have you not skied, but you'd really love to ski there?
Yeah, it's a good question. I haven't skied in Africa.
Oh, wow.
That would be pretty cool. I've actually produced films. Like I've been behind the scenes pulling strings for some shooting stuff that we did in Africa, but I wasn't able to go on the trip. I've skied on the edge of the Himalayas in Gulmarg, but I wouldn't really call that the Himalayas. So I think the Himalayas proper would be like in Nepal or northern India, like around the main region of the Himalayas would be pretty cool. Antarctica would be something really wild to see and experience. But it's funny. I mean, I haven't even skied in Zermatt. So wow. There's still a lot of stuff that's not so far away that I would love to experience.
Nice, man. Yeah, you'll have to come with us. We go every November to Antarctica. You'll have to come with Ice Axe Expeditions.
Oh, cool.
We'll have to figure that out, because that's fun. I've been a few times now. It's spectacular. We're going twice in November. I can't wait.
Awesome.
So yeah, that's cool. And so it sounds like you might only have 2 continents left to ski, Antarctica and Africa. Just watching the Solomon Freeski TV, it's insane where you guys go. And speaking of ski movies, what might be your favorite ski movie of all time?
Oh, there's so many good ski films over the years. There's a couple of films that really shaped me and really pointed me in a direction for my life that led to everything I've been able to do. And that would be the 2 Greg Stump films, Maltese Flamingo and The Blizzard of Oz.
Yeah.
And those films came out at a time when, I was in my late teens and just trying to decide what I was going to do with my life. And I watched those movies over and over until I wore the tapes out. And I knew I can still sing the soundtracks by heart. I mean, it was, they were like imprinted in me. And when I was, I think I was 16, I wrote Greg Stump a letter.
Oh, tell us about that.
Yeah. And because I was just frothing for skiing so hard. And I just loved that stuff. And that was like the kind of skiing in his films was exactly what I was into. And I just said, hey, I'm just a super big fan and love skiing. And if you're ever up in BC or in Vancouver Island, which is where I was, grew up and was living at the time, I said, I'd love to ski for you, or show you guys around, or be part of your films or whatever. It's just huge inspiration. And, that was 86, I think. So, that was a handwritten letter.
Right.
That I, put a stamp on and sent it to his office in Maine. And I didn't expect anything to come of it, but 3 months later, I got a letter back, another handwritten letter from Greg Stump saying, hey,
whoa,
thanks. That's awesome. We're we've got a pretty good roster of skiers with Schmidt and Plake and Hattrip, but one day, maybe it'd be cool to meet or whatever. And I was just, man, I was on cloud nine after that. I just couldn't believe that my big ski movie hero wrote me back. And funny enough, I think I want to say it was like 9 years after that, I skied. I had a part in one of his films.
No way. So, that's insane. Which movie was it?
Fistful of Moguls.
Oh yeah. That's a good one, man. I've seen that before. That's so fun. Do you think that getting that letter back and getting that positive reinforcement, do you think that helped push you?
Oh, for sure. Like it was just I just was at that age where I just wanted to ski as much as possible and just do, I still didn't, I don't think fully believe that I could be a pro skier at that point, but I was like, what's the harm in trying to like reach out to these people? I mean, they were so disconnected from me. I didn't grow up in a ski town. I grew up on an island in the Pacific Ocean. Like, I felt like the ski world existed way over there with all these like super cool people. And I didn't really know if I could ever be part of it, but I had enthusiasm and just loved it so much that I was, I said, well, let's take some chances and see what happens. And it's kind of how I ended up in Whistler too, was I just told my parents, I'm like, I just want to go ski for a year after, I'd done a year of university and then moved to Whistler, and there was nowhere to live. I remember, it was, people complain about how it is now, but it's kind of always been the same in these ski towns. And I remember sleeping in my car for a few nights looking for a place to live. And I just, when I was sort of giving up, I got a phone call from one of the people that I sent a message to, and they, they ended up giving me a room in their house, and it was that kind of kicked it all off, but it was this close to not happening,
It is interesting when you hear people's backstory, how tenuous their careers really were in a way, right? Like one small thing having gone, and I'm talking small thing, having been a different direction, they would end up, working in an office as an accountant. It's crazy. But there obviously is some clout to perseverance too. When you really do want something, you can fight through all that. But I love to hear, that the string that all was hanging on sometimes is so small. And I feel like I want to say thank you to the ski industry in general, to Greg Stump for writing you, because obviously you've become such an inspiration for so many skiers and riders and snow people, including myself. So that's awesome. Thank you, Greg, for multiple things, but especially that latter. What challenges you most intellectually on a daily basis?
Just the thoughts around the culture of politics and division in the modern world. Just, I this sort of existential thread of humanity and where we're going and what we're doing and climate change and, all this real world stuff kind of, it bends my brain, man. I actually have to take breaks from it because it can consume you. And I'm super curious. I listen to a lot of podcasts and things like that. And I'm just trying to learn and figure out where we're heading. It's crazy times.
It is crazy times. Yeah, I really got sucked in during quarantine because there wasn't a lot going on and the news was so exciting. And I recently really stepped away from it. And I feel a lot better. It's not good to put your head in the sand, but you need it at times. Mm-hmm. What's your favorite book or favorite books?
Well, I read a lot.
Good.
I've always got at least one book on the go. I just finished a book called 5 Little Indians, which is by Michelle Good. And it is the story of 5, it's a fictional story, but it's the story of 5 Native Indigenous people from Canada who and their stories once they left residential schools. And sort of, it kind of humanizes this whole idea of residential schools. And we understand the problem of them from 30,000 feet, but this kind of breaks it down into the individual stories, and it shows sort of how that cycle of poverty and trouble gets perpetuated by a series of circumstances. And so I thought that was pretty interesting. I kind of alternate between books like that have something to do with the world and the way we see it in modern times. And then just pure fiction, just a book that sweeps me away. And I think my favorite book I've read this past year is a Ken Follett book called The Evening and the Morning. And it's a follow-up, or it's a prequel actually to Pillars of the Earth.
Oh, that's a very famous book of his. Yeah.
Yeah. Which is just like one of my favorite books ever. So I really enjoyed that. It kind of swept me away, and just, especially when you're super busy with work and the world and everything going on, it's so nice to just have that. Like I read at bedtime and just to be swept off into a different place, as you go to sleep, and let the worries get left behind.
We spend enough time in this reality. That's for sure.
Yeah.
So I agree. I love visiting other realities. Well, thank you for that. We actually usually even do an article about people's favorite book. So I think that'll be a fun one. Those are different for sure. Who has inspired you the most in your life?
For me, it's just been this series of inspiring people that kind of build on the one before. In the early days, it was Scott Schmidt and Mike Hattrup and Blake to a certain degree. And then in my mogul days, it was Edgar Gros-Perrin, who was the world champ at the time, and Jean-Luc Brassard and John Smart. And then, it became like JP Auclair as we were kind of getting the whole new school thing off. I just loved the way he approached everything. And Shane McConkey and Chris Davenport. And I mean, sheesh, it's, the list just, I take it in from everywhere. And now it's filmmakers like Jordan Manley and Ben Knight and Anthony Bonello, and just, I could go on.
I like it. It sounds like it's progressive for you, always changing. And I love that. And then you're using that.
Yeah, for sure.
Today's episode of the Snowbrains podcast is brought to you by Brian Head Resort. Did you know kids aged 12 and younger ski free every day at Brian Head Resort? Brian Head Resort is located in southeastern Utah, where Little Rippers ski free. No purchase required. That's free. Free. Learn more at brianhead.com. That's brianhead.com. Today's episode of the Snowbrains podcast was brought to you by Elevenate. Elevenate was founded by professional skier Sara Rönngren and professional mountain guide Jimmy Odén. They wanted to create the best ski gear. So in 2010, they founded Elevenate, designed in Åre, Sweden, combining the free skier's playful spirit with the mountain guide's uncompromising attitude towards gear. Tested on the mountains of their doorstep, with decades of skiing and curiosity going into every stitch and detail. Find your favorites at elevenate.com. So now we'll do a little bit more in-depth stuff. And I don't always do this, but I think we'll kind of start at the beginning. And we'll kind of brush through this, because I think maybe not everybody knows this, that you were a bumper, you were a mogul person. And it sounds like you were on the Canadian national team, and even gunning for the Olympics in '94 in Lillehammer, Norway. Is that right?
Yeah. Well, the interesting thing, just to back up a little bit, is that I wasn't a bumper. Until I moved to Whistler. So I just grew up as a free skier. Like I was a free skier before that was really a term, I guess. And I just love skiing, everything from powder to steeps to bumps to hitting airs and trying to do tricks and all this kind of stuff. And then when I moved to Whistler, one of my goals was to make that year. It was supposed to be 1 year in the mountains. And I wanted to make that year as rich as it could possibly be. So if there was a competition on skis, I signed up for it. If, be it racing, be it freestyle, moguls, I called the local photographers and said, hey, if you're looking for someone to ski for the camera, I'd love to help you out. I met the guys that were shooting video at the time and started doing some stuff for them. And the reason I became sort of a mogul skier in that early 90s zone was that's actually the thing that I did the best at.
Oh, nice.
So when I competed, my first ever mogul comp, I ended up on the podium.
No.
And I was like, oh, wow,
Wow.
I guess I can do this. And then I met a few people from the national team, B. Thomas, Lane Barrett, John Smart, who said, hey, man, you're pretty good. Like you should try to do this seriously. And I was like, oh, you think?
I'm down.
And so anyway, long story short, I started pursuing it. I got my first coaching ever at 19 years old and made it to the national team in 2 years.
Whoa, that's incredible.
Yeah, it shocked me. And then that sort of like, convinced me to give it a go because I was planning to go back to school, but I was like, oh, I have a chance to be on the World Cup and do all this cool stuff. And so I went for it. And for 5 years, I was just all in on mogul skiing and, going to training camps around the world. And I was doing NORAMs and some World Cup. And then I wasn't a kid that grew up with big Olympic dreams, but by the time, I got onto the World Cup a little bit, I saw the Lillehammer Olympics coming and I was like, okay, let's go for it. Let's see what happens.
Nice, man. And how did it all go for you?
Well, I mean, I rose really quickly in mogul skiing, but when I got to the highest level, I started to plateau a little bit, and I started having some issues. And one of the things was when you grow up without any technical skiing background, you have a lot of bad habits, and I had a lot of bad habits. Like my coaches were like, "Ooh, man!" Like,
yeah.
So working through those bad habits and trying to get from, this level to this level was really tough for me. And what happened was because some of those habits were so ingrained, my coaches would just be pounding it into me and over. And over time, I started to lose confidence. I think mentally, I started to think that I wasn't that good of a skier, and it kind of broke me down over time. And I ended up not making the Olympic team. I missed it by one spot.
No. Oh my gosh, that's close.
Yeah. So that was a little bit frustrating, but at the same time, the Canadian mogul team at that time, that was like the beginning of the Canadian mogul team's dominance in the world. And, I think of the people that made the team, I think the worst placing was 7th or 8th. So
really? Wow.
The team was stacked, and Jean-Luc ended up winning that year. Yeah. And right after I missed the Olympic team, I was skiing and broke my ankle.
Oof.
For the first time. And to me, that was kind of like a sign that maybe it was time to do something else. I was also broke. That's the other thing is if you're at the very top, this was kind of before Olympics got really big funding and we were all supposed to be amateur athletes. So when I was on the Canadian team, any money I made as a professional skier had to be put into a trust fund that I couldn't touch until my career was over. So it was like all these weird, stupid rules. And I was like working double shifts all summer to pay for all this stuff and then just completely draining my bank account all winter. And it just reached a point where I decided that I kind of gave it a good go and I was going to move on.
And you moved on well, because now we got to talk about the new Canadian Air Force. And so I wonder what the time gap was between there. But let's just start from the beginning. What was the new Canadian Air Force and why was it formed?
Well, yeah. So to go straight off the back of my mogul career, I went and I considered going back to school and decided against it. I ended up getting a coaching job, mogul coaching with the Blackcomb freestyle team at the time.
Nice.
And I got some business opportunities in the ski industry in Japan. I was making videos for Japanese mogul market and going over there a bunch. All my sponsors were based in Japan at that time. So it was funny because I was much better known in Japan back then than I was in the rest of the world.
That's cool.
After 2 years of coaching at Blackcomb, I got offered the mogul coaching position with the Canadian team.
Oh, wow.
And so I started coaching the Canadian development team for moguls. And at that time on that team was Shane Zox, JP Auclair, JF Cousin, Vincent Dorian. These guys came in with a ton of energy and, JF starting to do grabs and spins on his skis and stuff that we'd never seen before. And we all kind of started feeding off each other. And even though I was the coach, I was only maybe 27 years old. I was still super into skiing. And so as soon as we'd finished the mogul training, we'd head over to the snowboard park, which it was at that time, where skiers usually weren't allowed, but we'd poach anyway. And we'd go hit all the jumps and try funky tricks. And the next thing you knew, we started gaining quite a bit of attention. And there was a little catalyst that kind of led to that whole thing getting organized. And that was my ski sponsor, which was Kneisel at the time, out of Japan, gave me about 6 months warning that my contract would not be renewed, which was super cool of them because it gave me time to make new plans. But mogul skiing was kind of dying in Japan a little bit, and there were budget cuts and all these sorts of things. And so at the same time, I was telling all this to a friend of mine, Steve Faring, who was the mogul coach of the Japanese team. And he said, look at all this stuff you guys are doing. Could you make a ski to do that on? And I was like, yeah, we totally could. And so he said, well, let's do it. Like, come up with some ski designs and let's see if we can sell it into the market and maybe we can do something. And so literally I started working on ski designs. We started working on kind of a marketing plan, and we talked to all the boys and said, hey, you guys, what do you think about doing this? And I'm like, yeah, that sounds amazing. And so we drew up a plan for twin tip ski. We made a video called Air Carving, because carving was the hot thing in the ski world back then. We wanted to get the executives' attention. Mm-hmm. And we shopped it around, and it didn't go very well. Everyone kind of told us that we didn't know what we were talking about and it would never work, and gave us all these reasons. And
I love that.
Yeah, but long story short, Solomon eventually saw what we were talking about, and we created the 1080 ski, and everything just blew up from there. And I think it was, the whole new Canadian Air Force thing. I think that was coined by the guys at Freeze magazine at the time. Mike Jaquit and Micah Abrams, I think, were the ones that came up with that term. And after that, we just, we went through a little rock star phase. It was pretty fun.
Yeah, it must have been so fun. So let's jump into those twin tips as you mentioned it. So it was the first ever twin tip ski. People told you it wasn't going to work. And in my understanding, it ended up being one of the best selling skis of all time.
Yeah. So it wasn't the first twin tip.
Oh, was it? Oh, because ballet skis, right?
Well, yeah. Twin tip is like, there's a lot of, there's a lot of blurry lines, I guess, in what's a twin tip and what isn't a twin tip. Right. We actually, through research and things, because everybody comes out and says, oh, we had a twin tip before that, blah, blah, blah. We found a twin tip, an actual photo of a twin tip from 1953.
Nice.
So that kind of shuts everybody up. We have no idea what the brand is, but anyway, someone made a twin tip in 1953. What we like to call it is the first high performance twin tip. It was the first ski built for that kind of skiing.
Yeah, essentially for park skiing.
Yeah, I mean, K2 had the Poacher before the 1080, but it was a noodle. Like you could bend it and make the tip and tail touch in a circle. Like it was that.
Whoa,
so it didn't really work that well. So the 1080, we like to call it the first high performance twin tip. And yeah, it sold a ton. It was a hit for sure.
Did you guys, as the designers, get a cut of that, or how did you guys negotiate that?
It was weird. It was weird to be developing a ski and trying to work out the business side of it all at the same time, and do it in a very timely, quick manner. Like that ski went from first workable proto to being on the market in under 6 months. No, which is insane. It's like I can't think of anything in skiing that's ever happened faster.
Wow, that's amazing.
There was the potential to patent it and try and do that. But honestly, you have to go back into our heads. First of all, our motivation was to be skiers and be sponsored skiers and make enough of a living to live the lifestyle. We weren't trying to get rich or patent an idea. We wanted, I don't know if any of us fully believed it would become what it did either. So we just wanted it to get out there. We knew if we patented it, it would probably stay much more of a small niche. But if we
take years.
But if we let it go, then we might change the sport, and we might create, a job for ourselves to be professional skiers. And that's exactly what happened. And could we have made more money at the time? Probably, for sure. But I have no regrets and no complaints about how it's worked out over the years.
I like the way you did it, and I like that there's no regrets. I mean, I think that more of us need to do that. It is the giving back part of it and the moving things forward part of it is so exciting. And it sounds like so JP Auclair, JF Cousin, Shane Zock, maybe a few other folks were in that, quote unquote, new Canadian Air Force. And JP Auclair is just so larger than life to me. And of course, he a good friend of yours. He passed in an avalanche in 2014 in Chile. And I just watched right before we got on this call his segment from All I Can. It's my favorite ski segment. Tell us a little bit about JP Auclair and your relationship with him.
Oh, JP was one of those guys that just that everybody wanted to be around. He just had an enthusiasm and an energy about him that was infectious. There are people like that out there, but they're you don't come across them every day. So he was something special. And I think, one of the things that I admired so much about JP is the way he lived his life. He lived with so much intention and integrity, and he wouldn't sell out for anything. He had his principles, and he had an aesthetic around his personal brand that he maintained at all costs, through good times and bad. I mean, there's some decisions he made that I was like, oh, dude, you sure you want to do that? That's gonna be tough. And he's like, I don't care, dude. I'm doing it like that. And when I look back now, or even later in his career, that was one thing that I really admired from him. And he was a very, very special guy. And when he went into something, he went in at 100%. And, you mentioned that All I Can segment. He edited that at the Sherpa studio in Whistler here. And I was checking in with him every few days on it. He must have spent 2 to 3 months just editing that part. Like,
it's only 5 minutes long, right?
It's only 5 minutes long. I mean, but that was like the level of detail and passion he put into it, and it shows. It paid off. It's something that people bring up all the time, and that's a little bit of JP's magic right there.
It's immortal to me. It really is, and I kind of like that. I heard a woman say once, and I love repeating it. She said, "I don't have regrets. I make decisions, and I live with the consequences." And it sounds like JP would agree with that too. And I love that statement. And just location wise, where did all this innovation happen? The twin tip, the new Canadian Air Force. What was kind of the focal position of that?
Whistler was the spot for sure. We used to, when I was coaching the mogul team, we would do almost all our training camps here in Whistler, either here or in Mount Hood. Mm-hmm. And a lot of it back then, it was kind of interesting. That whole twin tip thing happened way more in the summer than it did in the winter.
That's what I thought. Okay. So yeah, tell us about that, because that's just where it was happening. And why do you think it was that way?
Well, it's just, the summer was just so much more conducive to making that work, because you had slushy terrain parks. So we're learning tricks for the first time. They're done. Like, an icy terrain park in the winter is not where you want to try some of the stuff for the first time, but you get the slush is this deep on the glacier, and you're like feeling it, and you throw a little salt on the jump and you go for it. It's sunny and warm, and everything's grooving. And not only that, but it was just this concentration of talent that summer glacier skiing would, every day someone would do a new trick that'd never been done before.
Wow.
And so, and everybody would see it and be talking about it, and then trying to one up it. And I remember the film companies, usually back in those days, it was Johnny DeCesare with Poor Boys, and then the Matchstick guys, the TGR guys. And it would almost be a competition to see who could be the last one still filming on the glacier to get the latest possible trick for their films. And so, back then the glaciers used to hold up a lot better than they do now. So we would be skiing into sometimes late August, and those ski movies would be coming out in September. So it was like, and everybody's shooting on film. So it'd be like, who could get that last film reel developed in time to slot it into their movie to have the last great trick. So wow. It was pretty exciting.
That is a cutting edge time to be alive and to be a pro skier and to be involved. How special that you were there for that. That really sort of embodies and signifies how important it was, and how new and exciting and innovative everything was. I love to hear that story. It makes me think of you becoming a pro skier. How did you become a pro skier? So many people have that question. I know you get it all the time, but I think our listeners are always so curious too. How did it happen for you?
Well, if it isn't already obvious, I mean, it was passion from being a kid. It was that drive to be skiing as much as possible, to be absorbing everything I could from skiing, be it movies, magazines. I mean, Powder Magazine was my Bible. Like literally, I would check the mailbox every day to see if Powder Magazine was there. Even if I knew it was probably still a week away, I'd be like, what if it comes a day early? You know, and I just wanted it. I wanted it so bad. And I think, you know, people like that are willing to put the time and the work in, things will happen. I certainly don't feel like I'm particularly talented, but I think I like it a lot more than most people do.
I love that. And that's good motivation for everybody in so many different things we do. And I think a lot of times there's these breakthrough moments or these I don't know, these incarnate moments. And I'm guessing you probably had one. So was there ever a moment when you first felt like a pro skier? Like, whoa, today I feel like I'm actually a pro skier. And how did that feel?
I think there's some little moments along the way where, you know, you do your first, like I remember getting my first photo in Powder Magazine. That was a big deal. But there was one moment in particular to me that's kind of like the standout moment of my career. And that was the first day I filmed with Greg Stump, because obviously the Stumpy story that we talked about earlier, it was like this full circle of me kind of reaching out to him and then finally realizing that dream. But it was also the first time that I ever landed a Misty flip on skis. It's the first time I did it. I'm not going to say it was the first one done, but I'd never seen or heard of it being done before. And none of my friends had. And so it was like, holy shit, like we just changed the game. And that was before the 1080. And that was like part of what led to the 1080. But that day, I felt like we actually did something really special and something that maybe changed the game.
And describe to our listeners, what is a Misty flip?
A Misty flip is like an off-axis 720.
Like kind of going forward, kind of like a front flip.
It's a forward rotating off-axis, whereas D-spin or a cork 7 is more of a backward rotating off-axis. So
that's sweet, man. Yeah, that's so cool. That's a big moment. That's a big pro skier moment, especially, you know, when that is the first time you've ever done it, and maybe it hasn't been done or not very often. That's really special. Thank you for sharing that. I think sometimes too, what are the awkward or weird or uncomfortable or I don't want to say bad, but what are some of the challenges and weird, awkward things about being a pro skier?
Being a pro free skier is one of the best things I can imagine, because you're kind of famous, but only to a few people.
It's esoteric.
So you can exist in the world and no one knows who you are. You don't get hassled. You don't have to, you know, like being a major celebrity to me would be a nightmare. I mean, the fact that people recognize you everywhere you go and everywhere you're being hassled. But as a pro skier, at least at the level I'm at, which is not very up there, you
disagree.
You get recognized in the lift line, but you don't get recognized necessarily when you're out for dinner, you know? So it's kind of, and people are enthusiastic and they come up and they tell you their stories and say how, oh, you changed my life in this way, or this moment, this thing just stuck with me. And that's nice, you know, and we get paid to ski at all these amazing places. I mean, I still pinch myself. I'm like, how I'm going to Chile in a couple of weeks and someone's paying me to go there. This is awesome. So there's not a lot of downside that I can see, to be honest. You look at what people do to make a living in the world and we have nothing to complain about. We're the luckiest people on earth.
Yeah, I agree. It is a spectacular job, and it's so neat to watch you guys move through the world the way you do. And the only thing that maybe I could think of is that maybe you're nervous before, you know, a challenging line when the camera's, you know, you got to wait for the light or something. But I mean, for the most part, it looks like good living.
Actually, that is, you just hit the one thing that I really don't like. And I've said I was going to leave behind many years ago. And that is, that's being a slave to the weather.
Oh yeah.
Weather, I know that drives my family crazy because, you know, they're trying to make plans in the winter and, hey, can we go somewhere this weekend. And I'm like, I don't know if it's sunny, I got to be here because we've been waiting for this sunny day for 10 days and it's never coming. And maybe that's partly a problem of living where I live, where we only get a sunny powder day here and there. But that seems pretty silly to complain about.
I agree. But yeah, but it is, it's all relativity. But yeah, I love that. The pro skier career, a lot of upside. And a part of the upside is that you're called the Godfather of Freeskiing, which I always wonder, like, how does that, before we even get into it, how does that hit you when you hear that, when people say that?
I mean, it's pretty cool. It's been around for a long time. And I think it's nice to have a moniker, I guess, that says something about what you've done. I don't mind it. It's cool. I mean, it's
really cool. I mean, I think it's epic. And you're ubiquitously called that. You know, I was actually just looking at one of the images of you. You're kind of your hands are in a pray symbol underneath your chin, and it's got the Godfather symbol. And instead of the puppet, it's you doing a crossed up trick. It came out really, really clean. And do you know where that name came from and why people call you? And tell us why people call you that.
Yeah, I do know that story. And I had nothing to do with it. It was coined by a guy named Ted Wardlaw, who was the marketing director for Solomon North America back in, around the early 1080 Pocket Rocket days. They were working on a new ad campaign. I think it was for the Pocket Rocket ad when the Pocket Rocket first came out, and it was going to be featuring me. And I literally saw it for the first time the way anyone else would have. I flipped open the magazine to see the ad. I hadn't even seen the ad yet. And I was like, there I am, Mike Douglas, the Godfather of New School. And it just went from there. So Ted, yeah, thanks, I guess.
Yeah, no, thanks for sure, man. It's an excellent nickname or moniker or whatever you want to call it. And I like that you like it, because sometimes people get pegged with things they're not that interested in.
Yeah.
And so obviously incredible skiing career, and we'll poke at a couple more things, but we got to hit the filmmaking quick because it's so integral to your life now. And you've been doing this for so long. When did you make your first ski movie?
First ski movie was actually made in high school with my best friend, Kevin Fogelin, who is actually still my best friend, which is kind of crazy. We did it as a term project in grade 11 and got his uncle's 8mm little camera, looked like a gun kind of thing. And we edited it by cutting the film with these splicing scissors and then taping the film together.
Whoa.
And then we made the soundtrack on a cassette tape so that you had to start the film and press the ghetto blaster to start at the same time so that you had to sync sound. And what we learned, actually, the funny story behind that is that every ghetto blaster plays tapes at a slightly different speed.
Oh no.
So the soundtrack almost never lined up the way it was supposed to. It was so funny.
Of course. God, that sounds so old school now. I mean, I can't imagine pulling out a tape of film and cutting it and putting another piece together and splicing it. The way that we edit now is obviously quite different. Fast forward to now, you have Switchback Entertainment, your film company. And so, yeah, when did you start this film and why did you start this film company?
I started Switchback when I was about to turn 35 years old. Two things happened. One was I'd been working on the glacier here in the summertime at Whistler Blackcomb with John Smart at Momentum Camps. And so I was a partner with him in the camp biz.
Oh, nice.
And when I had my kids and a family, the summer camp scene was just like kind of too intense because my family would barely see me for about 6 weeks.
Oh, wow.
I would be in Whistler, but living in a hotel, helping run the camp.
Oh, wow.
And I would see my wife and kids like literally twice a week.
Oh, geez. So you were all in.
Yeah, like work could start at 7 a.m. each day and probably finish around 11 p.m. As someone who is running the camps, like it was intense. So I kind of started burning out on that. That was one thing. I did it for 15 years. And
wow.
And finally I got to the point where I just wanted to have some summer more than anything and be able to hang out with my family in the summer. So that was part of it. The other part was I was turning 35 years old. And at that time, 35 was like the ceiling for a pro skier.
Yeah.
Like nobody was a pro skier past 35.
Yeah.
So I saw that coming. And even though I felt like I was skiing pretty well still, I was like, okay, I gotta come up with a plan B here. What do I like to do? What other things could I do to earn a living? And I'd been, working on helping like Johnny DeCesare edit his ski films back then, and I was making mogul videos for the Japanese market. And I knew my way around an editing studio, and I was also working for ESPN. I was color commentator for the X Games through all those years.
Wow,
and so great. Yeah, so I was learning a lot about television behind the scenes, how it works, how to tell stories, how to dig deeper and create storylines. Whereas, if you go back to that time, ski movies were ski porn. Like they were music and action and individual segments, and there was no real plot line. There might have been a couple of funny skits, but there was no like storyline weaving through. And so I wanted to just sort of take the skills and my interests and see if I could make something that was maybe a little bit different. And so in those early days, I started first making some ski films for Japan, for the Japanese market, and then slowly North America. And we started Solomon Freeski TV in 2007.
And was that is that partially your idea, Solomon Freeski TV?
Yeah. That was myself and Bruno Bertrand from Solomon, who's still the global marketing director for skiing.
Nice.
And we came up with that idea based on sort of this brand new thing that came up called YouTube, and the fact that people were starting to just upload these videos online instead of buying DVDs at the time. Mm-hmm. And we saw an opportunity, and we saw also an opportunity to just tell short stories around skiing rather than just show action and music. And that got it started. And then around 2010, I started to get more into the leaning toward the documentary side and film festivals and trying to make deeper content. And it's still something that's hard to believe, but it's still going. It's been 15 years now. So,
and overlapping with a pro ski career too. It's really impressive, man. And I think a lot of us love the Solomon Freeski TV. So thank you for those. And it seems like they're just never ending. There's a handful of them every year. They're all so fun, and the storytelling is great. And thinking of that, how many films have you made now?
Well, it depends on how you define a film. If you look at like Solomon Freeski TV episodes and Solomon TV stuff, as well as other things we've done, it's probably 200 or something.
Whoa. That's so much work.
Yeah. But actual films that, that have made it into film festivals and that kind of thing, I don't know, maybe 20 or 25.
I mean, even that's a huge number, and you've done quite well with that. You've gotten, a handful of filmmaking awards. How many awards have you won now?
Yeah, it's been kind of crazy actually, because I actually have more awards as a filmmaker than I do as a skier.
Oh, no way. That's great. Congratulations. That's great.
Yeah. Which is funny. I mean, I don't put the same equivalency there. Like some film fest awards are small, but yeah, it's just funny when I look at my trophy shelf here at home, it's getting way more crowded with film stuff. So,
well, that's congrats. And what do those awards mean to you?
I mean, there's a few that mean quite a lot. I mean, there are some, like we've won at the Banff Film Festival.
Wow.
A couple of times. So that's kind of I guess would be the granddaddy of sort of the mountain adventure film world. Those are powerful, and a few other festival awards that mean a lot, and some long-term achievement awards as well, which is kind of the accumulation of many years of doing things. But I can assure you that awards, in your filmmaking is like everything else, man. You're only as good as the last thing you made. And
oh yeah.
Right now I'm literally, before and after this chat we're having, I'm toiling through a new film, trying to get it ready for festival deadlines next week. So
oh wow.
I'm in the thick of it right now. And it's part of the process, but it's not always the fun part, because you're certain things that aren't working, you're trying to figure out how to make them work. And that creative process is definitely a roller coaster.
Always. Yeah. No, I'm friends with Scott Gaffney, and he calls it the editing dungeon, especially, just the lack of outdoors, even for some of the editors, I think can be really challenging, but it's so important, and I think that's one thing that's so evident in the ski and snowboard world is you cannot be a pro or create any kind of movement without film. It's so integral. It sort of, without film, it just doesn't really exist in a way. And so I'm curious your perspective on what do you think is film's role in the ski and snowboard industry?
Well, we're lucky with skiing because skiing is so much more than just a sport. It's more than an activity. It's a lifestyle. It's a dream. It's something that people aspire to, that people will change their lives. They'll move across the country to a town, and it's akin to a relationship that you go all in on, and without film, without imagery, I don't think it would be like that, because it's those dreams, when the movies and the edits start coming out in September and October, and before that snow arrives, that anticipation, that, I just want to do it so bad, and it fuels that, and it's always fueled that for me. I mean, the mediums are changing for sure. Like the fact that we don't have Powder Magazine anymore, that was a tough one for me to take, because that was, to me, was such a symbol of my stoke for the winter. And now, we're learning, I'm having to change my editing style a little bit because of attention spans as well. We're having to do things to hook people in the 5 seconds, because no one can stop on their computer or their phone or their tablet for more than 5 seconds without flipping along, so
3 seconds.
Yeah. You've got to get them like that. It's an evolving field, but at the same time, good stories are good stories. And I think that hasn't changed, and that won't change. If you can dig into a good story and move people emotionally, I think, there'll be something worthwhile at the end.
Good storytelling is immortal. Life is really nothing but stories. It's what we do when we get together. We conversation is storytelling. So it's kind of the magic of language and human existence. And film is maybe the pinnacle of that, arguably. And so it's so we all appreciate what you do, and I think it's so neat that you were a skier for the camera, and now you're behind it. It obviously gives you so much more insight than the average person. And I think one thing that I heard you did recently, or maybe not recently, but you made the decision to stop sort of glorifying dangerous things in skiing, maybe outrunning an avalanche or things like that. And I'm curious, how did you make that decision, and when did you make it, and sort of how do you define it?
Yeah, that was a conscious decision, and we did that quite a while ago now, at least a decade, I want to say, ago.
That's great.
When you lose friends, when you lose professional skiers or icons, and you analyze the situations, there's a lot of introspection and soul searching going on there, and why did this happen, and what led to it. And for a long time, skiing and ski films were driven entirely by progression. It was like, who can push farther, bigger cliffs, more spins, faster line down the mountain. And it got to the point where, seriously, I remember there was an MSP film that came out, and I want to say it was like Richard Pearman or someone like that was essentially outrunning avalanches. Like he had a whole day where every slope he dropped into, he knew it was going to fracture. And he was almost toying with it.
Whoa.
And I remember having a discussion with some pro skiers and industry people after that. And we were like, that's messed up. Like it's great that he was able to do that and outrun these things. But if that's where we're having to push to get audiences fired up to go skiing, then there's something broken in the system. And after that, it was like, you know what, it's time to change the course here a little bit. I remember we had, it was a Solomon Free Ski TV shoot, and we were in Italy, and Kai Zackerson kicked off a pretty big avalanche, and it was sketchy. He was fine, but it was a sketchy situation. And this footage was spectacular, but we said, you know what, we're just not going to go there. Like, this is, and Kai's like comes out at the bottom back to us at the cameras, like, woo, 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 woo. Like,
yeah, as he does.
I made it. And he's just one of those bundles of energy of awesome everything. But we opted to leave that out of the film because we felt that it would look like that was okay. And it wasn't. And I mean, we had a big discussion about that night after it happened, about the mistakes that were made. What could we have done better? What should we not have done? And while I'm not saying that we hide these type of things, it's like when we present them in a new light. And we talked about that avalanche with Noah Morrison, the recent one near the top of the show here. We actually, Forecraft Ski Magazine put together a 5-minute edit of that, sort of like as a learning reference, and that can be found online, and you can actually see that whole scenario play out. So it's just a reshaping of the way we think, and it's to keep people safe and make sure that you can be out there enjoying this sport when you're my age, when you're even older, and that's important.
I respect that decision. And I do remember that. I feel like it was, in my mind, it was the early 2000s or so. And it just seemed like every ski movie just had people outrunning avalanches. And that was starting to be a standard. And I'm glad we went away from that. I'm glad you were a part of that. And I'd love to jump into the D-spin 720. So as I understand it, it's a trick you invented. And the D-spin maybe was called the Douglas spin. And so I'm just curious, when did you first do this trick? How did the trick come about?
Well, it was funny because it was a total accident. My goal was to try and learn a McTwist on skis.
And what's a McTwist?
McTwist is like a half pipe move done by snowboarders where it's almost like a misty flip, but they come up a half pipe wall and they roll in and they do this kind of inverted 540 and ride out. I could see in my head that there would be a way to kind of do that rotation on skis forward. Obviously, snowboarders are sideways, so we have to adapt everything at that point. And so I was trying to do it, and I was doing it actually at a water ramp here in Whistler, and I kept screwing up and facing forward. And the guys that were with me, I think it was JP and Shane, and everyone was like, that's really cool, but it's not a McTwist, but what is it? And some people are like, well, it's kind of like a backflip full twist. No, it's not a back full. It's more of a cork 7. No, it's not a cork 7. It's kind of like, anyway, this big argument ensued and everybody agreed that it looked pretty cool, but no one could figure it out. And then someone said, we should just like call it like the Misty flip. Like that doesn't even matter what it is, because it doesn't have a description in it. And somewhere D-spin popped out. And so, just called it a D-spin, and it stuck. So.
Yeah, and obviously you took it to snow and made it work. And how would you describe the trick?
It's exactly between a cork 720, so an off-axis 720, and a backflip full twist. And it's like, if you're right there in the middle and you're kind of confused as to what you just did, that's probably a D-spin. Mogul skiers probably do it the best these days, actually. They're probably the ones that do it the closest to what it actually was. And the irony is that I can't really do a proper one anymore. All mine are way more cork 7 than D-spins. So
that's awesome, man. Well, and I love it, because when you mentioned before that you're 52, and this was something that inspired me a lot. So you had a goal of still throwing a D-spin at 40. And so I'm curious, what does that goal mean to you, and where are you at with that now?
So, I mean, my first time I ever set a goal on it was to do one at 40. And that was pretty easy, because at 40, I was still skiing in ski movies, and I feel like my performance level was still pretty high. As the years have gone on, those goals have become a little bit trickier. The film In Fountain of Youth, that it came out I filmed it in 2017, so I was 47. I watched it today. It's great. Oh, cool. Thanks.
Yeah, continue.
I did one in that film, and that was the first time I'd done it in a couple of years. And then my next goal was to do it at 50.
Wow.
And 50 came, and it was a slow start to the season up here. And then I tweaked my shoulder on over rotating a backflip. And then by the time that started to feel better, COVID hit and everything shut down and the season was over. So I went through the year 50 without doing it and wondering to myself, like, am I ever going to do that? So when I was 51, which would have been not this past season, but the season before, I said, okay, like I've got to make a plan here. And literally, I was just going through the motions and going to the terrain park and warming up and getting my air sense back and feeling confident. And then I just waited for a sunny powder day and went to the Blackcomb Wind Lip, which was like the place where I landed my very first Misty flip ever.
Oh, wow.
Went there and stomped it on second try, I think.
No.
So
at 50.
So that was good.
No, that's amazing. Yeah. And I think you maybe have seen that that's a big goal of mine, was to still be able to do.
Yeah. Congrats, by the way.
Awesome. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And I think mine's more of a back full than a cork 7. But that's what my friends think it's called. So that's what I've gone with. And mine was an accident too. I was trying to do a 720 and this guy, Matt Brogan from Mammoth, was in Palisades Tahoe, which was squaw back then. And he just says, hey, you always crash and land back seat when you do these, don't you? I was like, yeah. He's like, try throwing it a little bit to the side, like a little bit corked when you come off. And he made me do it a few times. I crashed so hard, but then I landed one and my mind exploded because I had never planned on ever doing a cork trick in my life. So for me, it was a huge breakthrough. And so I try to do one every year, at least one. Now that I'm 44, and it's fully inspired by you. A, your trick. B, you had that goal of doing it at 40. And then I got it this year, man. I was so pumped. And so
yeah, I saw that. I saw that on your social media. I was pumped too. That's awesome.
Yeah. And I appreciate you saying something, man. It means a lot to me. Coming from you. So thanks for the trick and thanks for that goal. And I'm going to keep it going, man. My new goal is 52, but I don't know. It seems ridiculous. It's hard to even believe because even at 44, it feels ridiculous. And I did just watch your Fountain of Youth movie, which I really liked, especially as an older, modest, small-time pro skier career that I'm trying to keep alive. And I'm just curious, if you had to wrap it all up, your experience, that movie, everything into, a piece of advice for someone like me, what would you say to these aging skiers that are still trying to push it?
I mean, the biggest thing is to keep moving. It sounds incredibly simple, but really that's it. People, it's so easy to become sedentary these days. We sit at a desk, at a computer, we sit on the couch and look at our phones. We drive in a car, we go through a drive-through. It's like you got to get out and you got to get moving. And the easiest way to do that, to make sure that becomes a regular practice, is to set a goal. Mm-hmm. Is to have a goal. Like I'm going to go walk around the block today. I'm going to go up and I'm going to do 5 runs today. Whatever. And the bonus is for skiers is that, as you saw in the film, skiing is probably the best sport you can do for longevity. Longevity and maintaining health into old age is often about bone density. I guess that's one of the most important factors. And in particular, bone density in your lower body, because if you have really strong arms, it doesn't really help you move around. You've got to have a strong lower body. And if you're mobile, you can stay fit and healthy. And skiing, as the study that you saw in the film by Gota Mura, it shows that skiing it just has this unique way of loading your body in a symmetrical method that stacks up the G forces, but without blunt force like running or jumping. Like if the skiing is very smooth, but it still loads you up pretty good. And as long as you don't crash hard and wreck yourself, it's an incredible sport for maintaining longevity.
And I thought that was a really great take-home point. So I'll just drill it in even further that, it appears that from the research that these folks did, that it makes your bone density much higher than other sports, maybe higher than any other sport. So something to think about. Keep skiing, and hopefully snowboarding is the same. So keep skiing and snowboarding, because you do see it a lot. You do see a lot of old folks that are still skiing, and I love that. So just have a couple more questions, Mike. Thank you for your time. So Whistler Blackcomb, legendary spot, one of the top spots in North America, in the world. How would you say Whistler shaped you into the skier you are? Whistler had as much influence on me as anything else. I mean,
it's obviously the mountains here are incredible. We get a ton of powder where, that you can ski year round. It's, there's just, we're so many physical things, but more than that, it's the people here that shaped me. And this community is incredible. It's never have I been or lived in a place where people were so open-minded and so willing to say, why not? Like, let's try this, and also people got behind me at such a high level here and propped me up, and without that, I don't know. I'm confident I wouldn't have gotten nearly as far as I did. So this community is constantly inspiring me. And yeah, we have challenges like everywhere else. And that's that's no different. But the people here, just was out at a show in the village the other night, and it was just so good to feel the energy in the area. It's something special. I'm sure it's the same at Palisades or in Tahoe or in Aspen or Park City or wherever, like there's a certain special quality to the people that make their homes in the mountains.
It is having your crew, the people that really support you, at close range too. And you get such good crews in these mountain towns, and then the overall community vibe, it's just so important. So I'm glad you say that, because I do think that is the most important factor as well. And just for some local knowledge, let's give away a little bit here, because I think it's so fun to hear that, what's your favorite lift at Whistler?
Favorite lift on a sunny pow day would be the peak chair.
Mm-hmm. And why is that? And maybe tell us, what's your ideal day at Whistler look like?
It would be probably 30 or 40 centimeters of fresh snow, bluebird, peak chair. It's stable, so the patrol gets it open quick. And then that chair just services just radical terrain. Like it's almost like a stadium of awesomeness, because you're in the lift line. The lift line is going to be big, but that's just part of it. But you've got the waterfall cliffs, the Air Jordan right in your face. And so even when you're in line on a sunny pow day, like the Send Fest is incredible. Like you're just like pole clacking and woo, as people are just hucking themselves. Yeah. It is a show unlike anything I've seen in skiing. I mean, probably the closest that I've seen is the Fingers at Palisades.
Yeah. I was just gonna say Palisades Tahoe has a bit of that.
Yeah, but the problem with that one is the Fingers are a little further up the mountain. So when you're in the line, away. Yeah, you can see them and stuff, but here it's like right in your face. And so that makes it even a little bit more dynamic. But yeah, the Stoke vibe I'm talking about. And it's
oh man.
It's magic. And then you usually try and bang one or two runs down the front back to the line, and then you can start branching out to take the longer runs after that. And it's a little bit of a frenzy for sure, but there's a vibe that's hard to match for sure.
It is something very kind of crystallized in the air. I love it. I've had a few good days at Whistler on the peak chair. It is something special. So we're running out of time here, but we got to talk about climate change, because it's so big for you, and we can kind of keep it blunt and simple here. But I mean, it's obvious, climate change is changing our industry, shorter days or shorter winters, warmer temperatures, and, just less ski season, less snowboard season. And so I'm curious, let's start with what evidence of climate change have you seen in your lifetime?
Well, as a professional skier who's traveled around the world and grew up skiing on glaciers here in my own backyard, I mean, it's watching these glaciers deteriorate that's really driven it home more than anything else for me. I mean, when you see those ice levels and snow levels just dropping every year to the point where there's glaciers here that I've skied on for my whole career that are literally going to disappear in the next few years. So that drives it home. I mean, that's not weather. That's long-term effects, and it's accelerating. And so for me, that was something that I couldn't ignore. I've been paying attention to it for probably 20 years now. It became a pretty big concern of mine about 10 years ago. And I've been active on some level since then to try and do what I can, use my voice, use my platform to speak up and try and make something happen.
And you've done great. And a lot of your work, I think, has been through Protect Our Winters, with Jeremy Jones Foundation. And I am curious, what do you think has to happen to see real change in the fight against climate change?
I mean, actually, as I dig deeper and meet with more high level people, and I was back in April, I went to Ottawa, Canada, and met with the upper levels of government.
I saw that. Yeah, how was that?
Which was pretty cool. I mean, I've connected now in the last 6 months with every top member of government, from the Prime Minister through all the way down. And the messaging that I keep getting is that they need numbers. They need people supporting climate action. And that's the biggest thing. And it's funny because people think, oh, I have to stop doing this and stop doing that. And yes, there's some personal responsibility that comes into effect, and we can all reduce our personal carbon footprints. But if we want to make change at the level that's needed, at the pace that's needed, we need numbers. And the quickest way to do that is to join a group. Join Protect Our Winters, join Greenpeace, Sierra Club, anyone who's fighting climate change, join those groups. If we can, it's one thing, with Protect Our Winters Canada, we have 24,000 members right now. So we show up with the government, we say, well, there's 24 people standing behind us. Mm-hmm. And they say, well, that's great. That's a good chunk of people, and that's cool. But over here on the other side, we've got the oil and gas industry with 150,000 members to their organization saying the exact opposite of what you're saying. Now, we get it. We see climate change happening too. We want to do something, but we need those numbers on your side to outnumber the other side so that we feel confident making the critical decisions. And so joining a group is honestly the best thing that you can do, because there's power in numbers.
That's the best argument I've heard, because I always basically say, when people ask me that question, we need governmental change, and then I feel helpless and kind of walk away. But I think that you're right. I think that we'll get something up on Snowbrains, because I think that's so critical. It's so simple. Is if we have those numbers, you can walk up to a governmental organization and say, hey, we got 6 million people here that believe in this. You need to make us happy, or we're going to get you out of here. We'll vote you out. And so I do think that there's always strength in numbers. There's always strength in unity. That is such a clear message that I feel dumb I haven't really put together sooner. So we'll start pushing for that on Snowbrains as well. Because I'm a member of POW and the Sierra Club. Feel like local organizations for us. But I think that we could have a hell of a lot more people doing that. So I appreciate you saying that. That opened up a window in my mind. And there's something I can do about it. So I will. So thank you for that. Do you have anything else you'd like to add on climate change?
I mean, I think that it's a major issue that we have to act on. We have to do what we can, and I never want to give up. As a parent of kids, you want to leave them the best possible world. But what I will say is, don't let it consume you, because there's still a lot of amazing stuff in the world. Get out there, celebrate it, enjoy it. Go skiing, go biking, get outside, walk through the forest. There's no point in sitting at home being depressed. We have to enjoy what we have. I think if we can get enough people out there kind of appreciating what nature has given us, we have the best chance of taking care of it.
It's a great way to move the needle as well. I like that advice. And I did just watch, and I want to recommend to the audience your movie, Sam and Me, where you help a young person who is very concerned with climate change that is actually affecting his mindset negatively. And it looks like you really give him a pathway to get away from that and find a better mindset, which is great. So last question, what's next for you? What's next for you in your journey?
Well, when I get off this, I'm going to try and finish this film I'm working on. We've got a new one coming out. It's actually the longest doc I've made in quite a few years. It's called Tracing Influence. And what we did was we looked at 6 professional skiers and the people who inspired them. So it's this idea of like nobody, and it's a lot of the theme of what we've been talking about today, because nobody exists on their own. Like everybody is influenced by someone else who's come before them or is standing on the shoulders of someone before them. And in this film, we're kind of exploring that idea through the lens of professional skiers and how they got to the place they're at. And we chose these skiers based on the fact that all their stories were different. the inspiration came from different places. And it's coming together. It's something we're working on right now, trying to get it ready for the fall, but it's got some pretty good emotional moments. And in some cases, the person that had inspired the athlete had no idea that they'd done that. And we confront them in the film and things like that. So it's got some nice moments in it.
Well, I will really enjoy that personally, because that is one of my the pieces that I have the most interest in, especially at my age. Where does this influence come from? Even hearing your story today, right, is, where does this all come from? Because it's amazing the pieces of influence that are essentially manipulated by the next generation and how they use it, where they find it. All that storytelling to me is fascinating. Where will folks be able to find this movie once it's out?
All the main sort of outdoor ski related film festivals. And then at some point, probably in late 22, early winter, it'll appear on Solomon TV.
All right. Well, tracing influence. I'm excited to see it. Mike, that's all I got for you. Have any thoughts you'd like to share here at the end of the show?
No, just stay cool out there and get those ski dreams going. Hopefully people can find some snow to make some turns on, and I'm fired up.
Me too. Soon enough, man. Thank you so much, Mike. Great talking to you today. I really appreciate you being here. Have a great day, and I hope to talk to you soon.
Thanks, Miles.
Thank you so much for listening to the Snowbrains podcast. If you liked this podcast, please share with your friends and family, and please subscribe. To find out more about Snowbrains, please visit us at snowbrains.com. You can also find us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at Snowbrains. Today's episode of the Snowbrains podcast is brought to you by Elevenate. Damn, it feels good to be a skier, right? Elevenate enhances the experience of freedom and exploration of the mountain with trustable gear. They never compromise when creating gear for long-term use in the mountains, whether this relates to the design process, the choice of materials, or production. Find the gear you can trust for years to come at elevenate.com. Today's episode of the Snowbrains podcast is brought to you by Brian Head Resort. Get free lodging this season at Brian Head Resort. Stay minutes from the slopes and wake up rested to ski Utah's famous powder. This deal won't last long. Book yours today at brianhead.com. This episode of the Snowbrains podcast was edited by Jared White. Music by Chad Crouch. And I'm your host, producer, and creator, Miles Clark.